Everyone in America used to be awake at night because of a smile. It was frigid, twisted, and the product of a mind no one could quite understand, but it wasn't pretty. That smile was the work of Richard Widmark. However, what was in Tommy Udo's eyes? A husband who never left his wife's side for over 50 years, a brother who sacrificed his fame to care for his disabled sister, and an actor who once studied law but decided to play evil instead. He traveled to Hollywood not for fame but to demonstrate that even in the quietest of circumstances, a scream can be heard. The real life of this man was more fascinating than any noir film he had ever appeared in. We will now return to the secret aspects of his life and emotions. Richard Weedt Widmark was born in Sunrise Township, Minnesota, on December 26, 1914. However, Princeton, Illinois, a village in the Midwest, is where he was raised and developed his personality. His grandmother, Mary Barr, would take him to early morning movie screenings when he was 3 years old. He fell in love with silent films there, where the only ways to convey emotion were through eyes and body language. The focused, quiet approach that would later come to define him was shaped by this experience. He traveled extensively as a teenager with his father, Carl Henry Widmark, a traveling salesman. He learned how to be adaptable and resilient from this. His mother, Ethel May, became his sole source of support and paid for his education at the same time. In order to silently cultivate his ambition to become an actor, he also obtained a part-time work at the local movie theater, which allowed him to play out well-known scenes in the garden and watch movies for free. When Widmark attended Lake Forest College from 1932 to 1936 in order to pursue a career in law, he was emotionally devastated. In his final year, his parents divorced. His grandmother was a devoted Catholic, his mother was a Christian Scientist, and his father was a Lutheran. Because of their divergent religious views, he was compelled to choose between them and fend for himself. Because of the suffering in his family and his intense desire to overcome it, he threw himself into the brains of his theatrical characters. Almost immediately after finishing, Widmark traveled to New York. Having a difficult upbringing had taught him a lot, and he dreamed of working in theater. As soon as Widmark arrived in New York in the late 1930s, he performed well at the tryouts for the March of Time. He used unsettling pauses in between lines, reduced his voice to a whisper while discussing depressing images, and abruptly accelerated his emotions with a tense, compressed tone, in contrast to the expected dry, newspaper-like narration. This radio technique has never been employed before. With a cheer, the producer jumped up and declared, "This isn't a voiceover. This is a real actor." Widmark was immediately asked to join the March of Time's permanent cast. This resulted in regular appearances on radio and television shows Front Page Feral, Stella Dallas, and Big Sister. He concentrated on honing his voice without the use of stage lights or other obvious indicators, demonstrating intricate character psychology solely through sound. He was able to hone his abilities and prepare for his next big move from Broadway to Hollywood thanks to this challenging but rewarding experience. Widmark spent a few years on radio before relocating to Broadway in 1943. The legendary George Abbott directed both Kiss and Tell and Get Away Old Man, in which he starred. Despite performing in just 13 shows, his self-assured demeanor, impeccable timing, and remarkable ability to create dramatic tension left a lasting impression. Darryl F. Zanuck, a producer, happened to be at an early Kiss and Tell showing while searching for a fresh face for the film Kiss of Death. He was instantly enthralled by the way Widmark lowered his voice, blinked once, and then broke down in tears at the conclusion. On another occasion, Widmark had a high fever just before his last performance, yet he continued to perform despite the bloodstains on his shirt. He kept his co-stars and the audience in the dark. Zanuck urged him to screen test for the role of Tommy Udo in Kiss of Death because he was talented and would perform no matter what, and that's when everything changed. Richard Widmark made his film debut in 1947 at the age of 33 when he was cast as Tommy Udo by Zanuck, who was then employed by 20th Century Fox. Widmark was initially unsure, but director Henry Hathaway worked closely with him throughout rehearsals to get the timing, tempo, and eerie, calm before the storm, delivery just right. Tommy Udo leaped out when the word action rang before the crucial moment was filmed. Widmark himself performed the well-known wheelchair push down the stairs. The team had installed a covert track to ensure everyone's safety. The entire set was transfixed and astonished by the clattering wheels and that wild laugh, a broad, innocent smile brimming with malevolent ambition. People from all throughout the nation. People were equally surprised across the nation. Dark moviegoers claimed that Widmark's casual, "Hey, buddy," could make their hearts skip a beat. It was dubbed the scariest scene on film by Life magazine. He was a fascinating combination of explosive danger and innocent charm. In addition to landing him a 7-year contract with Fox, that scene made him a well-known noir movie antagonist. His silent yet impactful films will later be made by filmmakers like Otto Preminger and Billy Wilder. According to Widmark, it was the first time he had truly confronted his inner melancholy. Tommy Udo's terrifying chuckle will live on in film history from Yellow Sky onward. Widmark demonstrated that he was more than simply the king of villains shortly after Kiss of Death went viral, demonstrating his versatility as an actor who could play any role. He shifted from portraying a deranged madman to Dude, a brash West Coast bandit with a gruff, tortured soul, in Yellow Sky, 1948. Widmark brought out every wild flash in Dude's eyes and every defiant smirk, but Gregory Peck was always composed. In addition to being a vicious criminal, he was also a lonely man whose silences betrayed a great deal of suffering and sorrow. This portrayal demonstrated that Widmark was a complex figure who could strike a balance between unadulterated aggressiveness and genuine human depth, rather than being limited to a single part. Following that, Widmark portrayed an elderly sailor with a kind voice and compassionate eyes who guided onlookers through maritime storms and down to the sea in ships, 1949. He learned how to climb rigging, tie nautical knots, and steer the schooner himself since he didn't want to merely appear elderly. He halted filming and ascended the deck to retrieve his hat without a fake double when a strong breeze blew it off. His character's authenticity was evident in even the simplest gestures, thanks to that sense of hands-on dedication. It transformed a straightforward fishing tale into a vibrant, human-filled naval epic. In the 1950 film Panic in the Streets, Widmark co-starred alongside Elia Kazan as Dr. Clinton Reed. Reed was an ordinary man who becomes entangled in the plague outbreak in New Orleans. Widmark played a modest hero, a far cry from his earlier roles as villains. In scenes where there was a lot of tension, you could hear the fire in his voice and see it in his eyes as he sprinted through alleys searching for the source of the infection. This section was significant because it demonstrated his transformation from a menacing villain to a calm, gentle hero. As people admired the character's unyielding will and dreaded the disease spreading, it also demonstrated how much he could alter. Widmark's big break came when she co-starred with Marilyn Monroe for the first time in the 1952 film Don't Bother to Knock. He portrayed teacher Jed Towers, a former pilot who was assigned to a hotel to supervise a young child. With a composed yet powerful performance, Widmark kept the mayhem together as Monroe's character unraveled as she lost herself in her own memories and thoughts. During a screen test, Monroe fumbled her lines and sobbed, her eyes wide with terror. "Just take slow breaths. I'll wait until you're ready." Widmark placed his hand on her shoulder and murmured, which not only helped Monroe relax but also established the tone for how intense their on-screen connection would become. He demonstrated his concern for her and his skill at assisting his co-stars by gently grabbing her hand or telling her to slow down her breathing in a forceful voice. It subtly demonstrated that Widmark could excel with any exceptional skill. In Samuel Fuller's 1953 film Pickup on South Street, Widmark portrayed Skip McCoy. McCoy was a hardened thief with a delicate face and a strong need for forgiveness. His icy eyes, which occasionally flashed with grief, making him both melancholy and frightening as he moved through the city's shadowy streets. Widmark's performance was excellent. McCoy was shrewd and vicious when he was plotting, but he softened, almost perplexed, after realizing the meaning of morals and friendship. In addition to evoking the eerie essence of noir cinema, his deft balancing act between noir anti-hero and suffering humanity made viewers empathize about a criminal's attempt to find his soul. In addition to helping Widmark improve as an actor, these roles established a benchmark for aspiring actors by demonstrating his versatility as a doctor, a disturbed kid, a cowboy, and a sailor. Due to two exceptional performances in large-scale, tragic films, Widmark's notoriety increased even more at the start of the 1960s. In addition to being a popular Western, John Wayne spent more than 14 years working on The Alamo, 1960, which was his ideal project. Wayne initially intended to play a minor role in order to concentrate on directing, but United Artists would only cover the $12 million budget if Wayne was the main character. The 70mm Todd AO format, which featured a 202-minute roadshow version with an overture and an intermission, received 7 Oscar bids. Its first year's earnings were $20 million. In 1946, the project began with study in Texas, and in 1949, site scouting was conducted in Panama. Ultimately, it differed from D because it was a fresh interpretation of the Alamo tale. It was further Americanized by W. Griffith's Martyrs of the Alamo or Man of Conquest, 1939. In the end, Wayne felt most like himself as Davy Crockett, though he considered portraying Sam Houston and later regretted not playing Colonel Travis. When Widmark portrayed Jim Bowie, the film combined the spirit of sacrifice, patriotic speeches, and expansive landscapes. As a result, The Alamo became a film that embodied the American spirit of independence and strength. In the 1961 film Judgment at Nuremberg, which was set during the Cold War, 3 years after the first Nazi leadership trials, and as both Germany and the Allies were trying to forget the past, Widmark portrayed prosecutor Dan Haywood, a retired American judge who was in charge of the morally challenging trial of 4 Nazi judges who were in charge of sterilization policies and brutal purges following World War II. In stressful courtroom sequences, Widmark, Spencer Tracy, Marlene Dietrich, Judy Garland, and Maximilian Schell all made compelling arguments with a firm voice and unwavering gaze. Even Tracy's well-known parting remarks were captured on camera in a single take. The film grossed $16 million worldwide on a just $3 million budget. It received 2 Oscars, including Best Actor for Schell, out of 11 nominations. Both critics and viewers praised the Nuremberg judgment, which the United States later retained. It was listed by AFI as one of the top 10 courtroom plays in the United States. It was commended by the Library of Congress for its artistic, historical, and cultural significance. In the early 1960s, the role, together with The Alamo, made Widmark a Hollywood A-list star, demonstrating his versatility from academic gravity to heroic action. But Widmark was not merely an actor. He was determined to choose the scripts he would employ and have complete control over the development of his projects. Combining the names of their 2 sons, Heath Productions was formally established in May 1954 by him and his spouse, Jean Hazelwood. They made their first independent picture with just enough money. Widmark played the Dauphin, and Heath debuted in Otto Preminger's St. Joan in 1957. From the artist's idea to the final product, everything went smoothly. Later, the business co-produced the television series Madigan, 1972 to 1973, and the Cold War spy film The Secret Ways, 1961. This shown that Heath Productions was not hesitant to invest in a wide range of projects, including independent films, serialized television shows, legal dramas, and historical epics. Because they selected the script first and then worked out how to make it, Heath Productions had the guts to tackle delicate subjects and operated as a small, adaptable team. Widmark was able to resist being typecast, maintain his artistic vision, and gain more authority both in front of and behind the camera as a result. In Hollywood's period of strictly regulated studios, it also bolstered the legitimacy of a firm started by an actor. In addition to his success in film, Widmark gained notoriety on television. His portrayal of President Paul Devlin in the miniseries Vanished, which was based on Fletcher Nebel's book about a plot to kidnap the United States, earned him an Emmy nomination in 1971. Kennedy, John F. Because of its strong political issues, Vanished was one of the most watched shows of its season despite making no money at the box office. Widmark's ability to remain composed in the face of chaos was commended, particularly in a scenario where he makes an Director Paul Wenkos skillfully used an emergency call from the Oval Office to give the audience the impression that horrible things were about to happen in a matter of minutes. Then, in 23 episodes of the television series Madigan, which was based on the 1968 film of the same name, Widmark returned in 1972 to 1973. Each 60-minute episode drew between 15 and 18 million viewers, and it frequently ranked among the top 20 shows during its existence. The show allowed Widmark to display his vast spectrum of intense emotions, whether he was investigating murders within the police force or mentally battling crime leaders, thanks to guest stars like John Cavett and Diana Muldaur. Madigan only aired for 2 seasons due to exorbitant production expenses, but it received plaudits for its excellent acting and realism. This demonstrated that Widmark was among the rare celebrities who transitioned well from film to television. Despite frequently portraying frightening characters on cinema, Widmark excelled in supporting roles such as devoted friend, parent, and husband. Romance in college. Widmark was already seen as a recluse at Lake Forest College due to his involvement in debate, sports, the Honor Society, and the Play Club. In addition, he oversaw the men's clothes department at Marshall Fields. He met Jean Hazelwood, an acting student, there. In order to keep him from knowing, Jean, who served as his teaching assistant, frequently went to Widmark for assistance with her tests and then pretended to fail several of them. To maintain harmony in the department, they spoke on the phone behind everyone else's backs after the teachers told them they couldn't be friends. On a warm afternoon on April 5, 1942, Richard Widmark married Jean Hazelwood, and movie theaters could hear Tom Udo's ominous laugh. That undergraduate friendship swiftly developed into a family. Their daughter, Anne Heath, was born in 1945, 3 years later. During Widmark's major Hollywood and Broadway debuts, their modest home served as a haven of support. Unlike many glitzy Hollywood couples, Widmark and Jean's marriage was based on mutual respect and understanding. Jean frequently accompanied her husband on site scouts and provided script input. The only one who truly realized how quickly he worked was her. In the late 1980s, Jean started to lose her lines, and said, "My mom took scripts into the bathtub to talk about with Dad instead of chasing cocktail lights." In 1992, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. When Widmark was older than 70, he put all of his initiatives on hold in order to care for his wife. He went with her in the yard, read her scripts aloud to help her remember them, and kept track of her medications. And replied, "Dad turned the house into a small hospital, but on her good days, he kept it warm and comforting." Love and duty. Jean passed away on March 2, 1997, while in her husband's custody. 2 years later, Widmark remarried actress Susan Blanchard in a modest ceremony. Together, they led a modest life in Roxbury, Connecticut, until Widmark passed away on March 24, 2008. Richard Widmark exemplified the importance of family loyalty and devotion. In addition to his creepy on-screen persona, he is honored on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and the Western Performers Hall of Fame as the protagonist of a straightforward yet powerful love tale. He is a real-life illustration of how duty and love can endure despite adversity. Widmark was well known for his affection for his younger brother Donald and for having good evening walks with Jean and recording her medications during her final years. Donald Widmark flew in the 445th Bomb Group of the Army Air Force. After being shot down 3 times over Europe, he was taken prisoner of war by the Germans and detained for over a year. Richard learned about his brother's disappearance in November 1944. He was establishing himself on Broadway at the time with Kiss Them For Me. Richard and Jean learned that the war was nearly finished and that American POWs were being released in the Princeton County Republican early in the summer of 1945. This occurred just prior to him taking the stage. He ran backstage and was startled to see Donald in person. On July 25, 1945, Donald's birthday, Jean prepared to give birth to their daughter Anne Heath, and he immediately returned to performance after giving his brother a hug. Donald experienced severe back injuries, migraines that prevented him from functioning, and a brain tumor that required partial excision when he returned to California after the war. By 1951, he was partially crippled and his speech had been taken away. Without hesitation, Widmark moved in with his brother and covered all of his medical expenses, including physical therapy, medication, and surgery. He allocated an entire room in the house for Donald to recuperate, engaged specialists, and installed mobility aids. Trump passed away on December 22, 1955, and was laid to rest in Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Los Angeles. Widmark remarked, "It wasn't just duty, it was an unbreakable bond of brotherhood." Childhood friends Gail and Max Kastner returned to Princeton simultaneously to assist in the construction of a commercial airport, but the memories of the POW camps continued to haunt them. Widmark's incredible career on stage and in films was made possible by that incident. Following the completion of his final work, Richard Widmark retired to his private residence in Roxbury, Connecticut. As he grew older, he read historical books and spent time with his family, remaining silent. Occasionally, he would make jokes about not being able to charge across the screen for any longer. His final years, however, he was climbing stairs at home in 2003 when he slipped and cracked a vertebra in his neck. As a result, he used a walker virtually constantly. Constant muscle spasms, agony, and eventually muscle atrophy, circulation issues, and breathing difficulties were brought on by the accident. In order to facilitate his mobility in his final years, Susan Blanchard installed steps throughout the house and employed private nurses. He continued to read journals and novels, but his frequent episodes of pneumonia made him progressively weaker. Richard Widmark passed away at home on March 24, 2008, at the age of 93, due to the irreversible consequences of pneumonia. Widmark developed antagonists in his distinct anti-heroic cinematic style, revealing them not only via action but also through still images and facial expressions. The players who followed him were greatly influenced by this technique. Three of his well-known colleagues, Henry Hathaway, John Ford, and Samuel Fuller, praised him as the pinnacle of professionalism. Marilyn Monroe claimed that she was inspired on set by his inner charisma. In 2002, he was honored by the Western Performers Hall of Fame and the Hollywood Walk of Fame, 6800 Hollywood Boulevard. But his most enduring contribution is the more than 60 films he produced, from epics to noir, which are still referenced in films, books, and interviews. They remind us of a man who prioritized his family and his craft over his notoriety. From the irate expression in Kiss of Death to his eerie villains and his unwavering devotion to his family, Richard Widmark's art demonstrates the potency of quiet. He has a star on the Walk of Fame and has appeared in over 60 films. He is also regarded as a member of the Western Performers Hall of Fame. The anti-hero archetype that would last for generations was shaped by his modest yet strong nature. Which aspect of his life or influence most affected you? Please share your thoughts with us, and remember to subscribe so you don't miss the next captivating tale.